The simplest things, like trying to buy a ticket, making a phone call, getting off a train, keeping up with the news, discovering you're late, finding your way around, or not finding your way around. Nowadays, all these activities involve some sort of human-computer interaction. Almost everything depends on computers and user interfaces. I'm going to look at how crucial these interfaces are, how some fail while others fly, and how it's up to the people who design them, rather than the people who use them, to make the difference. I'm on a journey through a busy airport, London Stansted. However, during this programme, I'll also be visiting a number of organisations who are trying to make their systems easier for people to use. Around me in this airport are countless reminders of how different people can be. Different shapes, different sizes, different eyesight, different languages, different ages, mixed emotions. And it's not just different users that need to be thought about. There are differing environments. Even the simplest tasks, like finding out where to check in, can be frustrated if designers ignore the surroundings. These screens at the airport entrance, for example, would be marginally more useful if the lighting conditions didn't make them illegible. Thank goodness the people in here don't face such problems. This is management control, the nerve centre of the airport, where the information displayed outside is entered into the system.
With what airlines, George? Oh, right, yeah.
But even here, with optimum lighting conditions, the interface designer still has to think about the environment. Noise, distractions, stress. So, the first stage of good interface design is to identify exactly who will use the system and to work out their needs and abilities. This is because, as the interface is developed through a series of prototypes, these users will be the key to getting the design right. You need to know whether they're members of the general public, whether they have special needs, if they're specially trained. You also need to consider the sorts of tasks the user has to do. There's a world of difference between trying to get cash from a hole in the wall and controlling the operation of a rapid transit system between airport terminals. In any circumstances, an interface should be transparent and intuitive.
All passengers and staff must depart the train at this station. For the passengers on this train, please depart at this station.
Of course, some interfaces will always demand a degree of user training.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just get in the right screen for you. In 3 days?
Yeah, that's it. A medium car, just for the day.
Just for the 24 hours?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
So what's the system like to use?
The layout could be a bit easier, but I mean, it's okay. It has its moments.
Do you need training, or
yeah,
I couldn't use it if I sat down in front of it?
No, you have to go on a week's intense course.
Right, oh I see.
Unfortunately.
So is there a bit of a knack? Is the course enough to get you up and running?
No, you have to be involved with it. You know, you have to work with people, with customers. You know,
right.
to sort of find out what it's really like, rather than being in the training room,
right,
sort of
I see.
learning
In the field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, it's coming out £30.50.
Right. Okay.
That's without deposit. It's £150 deposit included.
Some interfaces can be hard enough to work with when there's only the public to deal with, but other systems demand all sorts of complex interactions and tasks, on top of interruptions by awkward customers.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Okay. Would you like to sit in a window or an aisle seat?
A window seat, please. Is the flight full?
No, it's only half full.
Can I have a seat with a spare seat next to it?
Yeah, sure you can. Peter, can you just hold a seat for me, please?
Certainly. Which flight?
On the 2008?
And a surname?
Woolley. Thank you.
Of course, many interfaces, like the ones you find on the web, are primarily designed for users working alone. Huge amounts of money can be invested in software, and if consumers aren't happy, they'll go elsewhere. The results can be commercially catastrophic and sometimes headline news.
Just a few months ago, it was valued at £250 million. Now the internet clothing shop Boo.com has collapsed and 300 jobs will be lost. It's raised new fears about the future of other web companies.
Over £80 million was spent on building and promoting a website selling fashionable sportswear across Europe. While sales were rising, they never...
Flashy graphics and gimmicks like spin and zoom may have seemed like a neat idea at the time, but they slowed some systems down to the point that customers simply couldn't buy, now or at any time. Often when you design an interface, you need to know what users think of it. But sometimes you need to know what they actually do, to observe their actions as well as reactions. A whole new strand of technology is emerging, capable of observing user behaviour down to the blink of an eye.
The great advantage of having eye tracking is that you can actually learn far more about what the user is doing. You can spot that they are looking around for a submit button and they can't find it. And you can then address that in whatever way.
When you're designing a web page or any kind of interface, you might want to know how the user actually views it. And here's a piece of kit that gives you that kind of information. It's an eye tracking device, and it works by producing a beam of infrared light that bounces off this mirror into the user's eye, out again, and then bounces back into a camera where it goes off into a computer. And then the information that comes from that is superimposed on a picture that comes through this little camera here, which shows what the user's actually viewing. This is the output of the system when I tried on the eye tracker. Right, I'm going to try and book a flight. So I'll select this button. And best fare finder. So that's obviously a button I need to press. Right, now I can scroll down. And what I'm looking for is where I enter where I'm going from and to. There we go, departure city. Amsterdam. Right, let's leave those for the moment. Destination London. And scroll down.
The data from the eye tracker is actually a video recording, and we're getting a gaze position over what the user is looking at. And we actually have another camera shot of just the user as well, so we get the whole view, where we can maybe get some emotional reaction of the user to the interface as well. So what the system does is it then records all that as a digital video file straight to a hard disk of a computer. And while we're recording that to the hard disk, we're also logging user events, tasks, maybe if in detailed where actually the user is looking, because we've got that information recorded on the screen.
Right, press the book a flight button. Right, buy now button. Buy
It's
later.
quite easy for usability people to say there's something wrong here, there's something else wrong here. But the difficulty for all usability professionals is to actually get something done about it. And one of the ways that you can get something done about it is convince the designers and the managers that something needs to be done. This system is a brilliant tool for doing that.
So let's say I select one of these. Wearing a converted cycle helmet's fine for short periods, but I have to say not the most fetching or comfortable fashion accessory. Right. Press the book a flight button. Some interfaces have to cater for a broad range of users, but others are aimed at experts who have to deal with tiny but absolutely critical details.
Intercept ILS 27 left. Lufthansa 4038, turn right, heading 240 degrees, intercept ILS 27 left.
If ever there was an example of a safety-critical interface, this is it. It's the air traffic control screen for Heathrow, and each one of these little dots represents a flight. The air traffic controller's job is to try and line up all these aircraft so they land on the runway at a rate of about 1 every 2 minutes, and at the same time keep them a safe distance apart. This is where the Final Approach Spacing Tool, or FAST, comes into play. Take, for example, this flight, Swiss Air 806. A little white number appears, a countdown, which tells the air traffic controller the optimum moment for the aircraft to make its turn into its final approach into the airport. And once the countdown is completed, a white chevron appears, showing the direction in which it should turn. FAST's little white numbers may seem like small, even insignificant details, but you can't change an interface like this without first involving the users.
Clock's on!
Air India 188, descend altitude 4,000 feet, copy the range 21 to touchdown.
Given technical support and a role-playing pilot, an experienced air traffic controller can work with a simulation.
Air India 188, turn left, heading 360 degrees, reduce speed 180 knots. Shamrock 178, contact the tower 119.72.
This late-stage evaluation was designed to trial FAST in operation. In such a safety-critical system, this test environment has been set up so that every action of the user is recorded and analysed.
Lufthansa 4038, turn right, heading 240 degrees, intercept ILS for landing runway 27 left.
The users are absolutely critical to the design process because they are the people who know precisely what information is important to them, and so they're well able to explain to us where information should be located, how that information should be highlighted, and how they want to use that information. Highly trained users have very firm ideas about how they want to do their job and are fairly firm in making recommendations about what they want to see. It's easy to use well-trained users in the design process because they do come so well informed in the first place. They make a very significant input to the design.
Swiss Air 806, turn left, heading 360 degrees, reduce speed 180 knots.
Left heading 360 degrees, speed 180 knots, Swiss Air 806.
Shamrock 178, 0 established, descend on the ILS. Swiss Air 806, continue descent to altitude 4,000 feet. The QNH is 1013.
For FAST, they're using the Software Usability Measurement Inventory, the SUMI questionnaire.
SUMI is a way of assessing how our controllers felt about using the FAST software. As you step through each question, try not to dwell on the question for too long. Fill in your answer in the check boxes, but try and give your first response to each question.
Sure, no problem.
It has a number of different aspects of usability incorporated into it as separate scales, and the controllers filled out that questionnaire at different phases during the evaluations that we carried out. And throughout the development process, we were able to see the SUMI scores increasing as the feedback from the controllers was incorporated into the design. So at the final evaluation, the SUMI scores really were quite high and indicated that the technology was really state-of-the-art.
With safety-critical systems, there's no room for error. Even though FAST might look like a small change, development and trials have taken over 2 years to get the design exactly right.
You'll be boarding through gate number 33 this afternoon, and we ask you to be at the gate at 1:10
Great.
please.
Thanks very much.
All right, thank you.
Some user interfaces have been shaped by years of design and development, but the pace of technological change means that many new ones are being unleashed on unsuspecting users. And that, as BT has discovered to its cost, is where usability evaluation can prove essential.
I've called this presentation Making the Internet Easy, because unfortunately that's something which it currently is not for many of our customers. We were asked to become involved because the costs of running our help desk for internet products was much too high. We were receiving more and more calls by our help desks, and we needed to understand why.
The costly element that BT faced arose from the thousands of calls to the help desk by customers trying to register. Richard Blythe and his team were able to save money by identifying the usability problems. To find out how they did this, I tried out the original system in BT's usability lab.
Best results, BT Internet recommended.
Here they can observe the user's every move with two-way mirrors and concealed cameras.
BT Internet supports the following software products. Oh, turn sound off. I'll do that. Thank God for that. Off it goes. Next screen. There's quite a few there. I might skip that.
But observing users is far from the only way of evaluating an interface. There's a place for expert input too.
I'm trying to get connected to the internet, and this is a disk that apparently will help me do it. I just insert it into the computer and go through the procedure. And while I do this,
A user interface designer can also identify many of the usability issues and pick up specific problems by running a separate so-called heuristic evaluation, which asks questions about the look and feel of the interface.
Well, here's one already, really. It's a little bit slow with the feedback about what's happening. All I can see is a light on the CD drive, nothing on the screen. Better feedback or a bit of a better performance here might help. Can't tell what status the system's in. Here we are, something's happening. Well, that's something, but it could be a better message. I've lost a bit of control here. I don't know what to do. And I've also got some music come up, which I'm finding a little bit irritating, and I've got no way of stopping it. Here we go. Not really related to getting connected. And there's a useful button there, turn sound off, good. And that has worked, just turn the sound down. But the button still says turn sound off, hasn't really changed status, so there's a bit of a bug there. I think there's a lot of stuff on this screen which is irrelevant for these users whose main target is to get connected, and they're going to start ignoring it. And we may find that there's something important they should read, and they don't. Keep going. We've got something here. Now, where are the buttons here? There's no... I don't know where to click, but I don't know why they couldn't have used the style of button they used previously. There's a lack of consistency here in the design. Here are my options. I can install, or I can look at the release notes. Yeah, they're pretty clear, they're buttons. But again, I've got another visual style in the display here. I don't really know why. So let's go on for it. I don't need to look at the release notes this time. Let's try it. And that's pretty standard radio button action.
So there's a role for heuristic evaluation, along with observing the user. And there's another expert technique that can help establish whether the interface fits in with the user's likely way of thinking, and that's the cognitive walkthrough. This usually involves a checklist which asks repeated formal questions.
Basically, we define the whole procedure as a sequence of steps. Now, the current action we're at is the selection of the installation option. My feeling is that most users really won't be bothered about choosing an installation option. They just want to go through and get connected. So really, this step is not really required. Is the correct action available to the user? Well, the action entails the user selecting from a drop-down list and then choosing the next action to progress through the wizard. As far as the user's point of view, it doesn't really explain why they want different options. I don't think they'll be able to perceive which one is the correct one for themselves. After the action, will the user understand the feedback they get? In a typical wizard fashion, this has gone on to the next step, so I think they will understand the feedback they get, yes.
it's installing. Right, you've gathered together your expert opinions, you've monitored your user reactions and any frustrations. The next step is to put together these findings and start improving the design. And then you review it again, as BT does at peer group review meetings. Here, the designers have to face a barrage of questions from colleagues.
Why did you come up with the particular structure you've got there on the screen?
We found that through the earlier research, especially the user testing we did, that some ISPs, front ends, have perhaps 5 options on the first screen. And we were noticing that users would look at these 5 options and effectively glaze over. They were looking at these things and didn't really know what they were, and just sort of being, confused, really.
I believe that something like 10% of males in Britain have a problem with red-green discrimination. Did you make any recommendations about the use of colour?
You were saying on the front page about keeping navigation simple, and you just had the 2 options there.
Yeah.
But I've noticed as you go further in, you start to get a history. I was
Yeah.
wondering why you decided to do that.
If I hear you right, perhaps quite a number of your users are going to be what we call naive users, first-time users, and not very familiar with this medium.
Some of these questions can sound very basic, but they are essential to keep the designer focused on the users and their needs.
I'm not sure I saw that.
It's not just the big players who treat user interface design seriously. Smaller companies have accepted the benefits of user-centered design and set up usability groups. This is Razorfish, a new media company.
Well, obviously, in an ideal world, we'd like to have lots of time and lots of resources and lots of money to be able to do all the research that we want to do, but it never ever works out like that. But it's always worth doing some sort of testing, and quite often we'll get people saying to us, right, we need these results tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. And even in that short space of time, then it's possible for us to find users and get some valuable information. It's not ideal, but it's still worth doing. Occasionally we do have conflict with the designers. We found the best way to overcome that is actually to get the designers in to watch the usability tests or the design feedback that we're doing, because that's the best way of getting people to understand what users really feel.
Designing for new technologies can be a fast-moving target. Expertise derived from working on large screens has had to be adapted to smaller and smaller screen interfaces. Razorfish have been getting to grips with the Wireless Application Protocol, the WAP interface.
OK, Chris, start off with just explain to me how the WAP interface works.
OK, it's basically a page of text links, hyperlinks, linking to more textual information. They don't generally have graphics like a website. OK, by scrolling down you can select different textual links, moving between different pages of information.
So what are the characteristics that you would get on a PC screen that you can't get on a WAP phone?
You can get small graphics, but you wouldn't. With this site, the navigation is done with images. And
so what are the main constraints, would you say?
When designing with the phone, the size of the memory in the phone, the download speed, the different styles of text that you can use.
Have you used users at all in evaluating?
Not for WAP. I mean, the users that use it are generally techno-savvy people, which we've got plenty of in the office, so they're our users.
Please hold tightly. This transit is approaching the terminal building.
Not every user interface has to be in your face. Not all computer systems have screens. They can use any medium to exchange information, such as touch or even sound.
This is the terminal building. This transit terminates here.
For example, an automated telephone answering service uses sound. CallMinder is one such system, and some customers had problems with an early version, which once again led to costly help desk calls.
CallMinder was submitted for user evaluation because we're trying to make some radical changes to the product. The old CallMinder service was something that customers had said they wanted more features for. The only way BT could do that was to bring in new technology, and that in turn meant we had to make a lot of changes to the interface.
CallMinder Help Desk, how can I help you?
So in a moment, what I'll ask you to do is to use the service. I'll be playing around with the computer here and putting on some headphones. We normally try and keep things as simple as we can.
Press 1 to change your personal option.
So if we're using equipment to, say, record users, we try and keep that in the background, so when they walk into a room, they're not hit by, for example, a camera looking at them or big microphones everywhere. So we try and keep that kind of technology to a minimum. We try and have an atmosphere where people will hopefully feel relaxed.
To listen to the message again, press 1. To save it, press 2.
When selecting users for a trial, it's very important to pick people who are closely representative of the end user of the service that you're going to test. We took a study of the existing CallMinder user population, took a sample of those types of people, but then we added new types of people who we thought would be most likely to use the new features we're adding to the service. That's lovely, thank you. What I'll do now is just ask you a few questions about what you think of the service.
Okay.
What I have is a series of statements. The first statement is the new CallMinder service was easy to use. Do you strongly agree, neither, disagree or strongly disagree with that statement?
Neither.
Okay. Do you have any particular reason for that?
Well, mainly down to the user guide, because it didn't tell me how to access my messages in the first place. It didn't tell me how to play them. It said replay but not play in the first place.
Right. So is that something you'd like to see added to the user guide?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
More and more companies are beginning to wake up to usability issues, and all sorts of fancy technologies are emerging to make evaluation and design more sophisticated. But in the end, all you really need are simple tools like pen and paper, the help of colleagues, and time to think about the users themselves.
Radio button set there. Why do they have this task anyway to define what crowd?
Yeah.
I thought they could get it from the number, or at least validate it on the number independently of the type.
It does a kind of validation. I mean, if you click MasterCard there, enter a Visa number,
you get an error.
You get an error.
Yeah, in fact, it's easy to do.
You don't need to have radio buttons for these. You just need to have some information, some hint text, saying which kinds of cards.
That's certainly true from the user point of view. We'd have to check what the validation service requires.
Final call for flight UK 2008 to Amsterdam. Now closing through departure gate.
In human-computer interaction, it's the humans that count, not the computers. Designers aren't dealing with machines, they're dealing with people. It's the ones that realise this crucial lesson that will see their computer systems really take off.